Everybody, it's your boy Joe, the Wealth Architect, coming at you live and direct. And the other day, I was at a friend's house, and we were talking about money, of course, but we were talking about risk. And I was talking to a guy who had served about 20-something years in prison, and said that he hadn't begun investing, that he does save money, but he hasn't begun investing because he just finds it too risky, that he does read books about it, watch YouTube videos, things like that, but has not gotten around to investing because he said it's too risky. And I thought it was fascinating, I wasn't like surprised, but I thought it was fascinating because he went on to say that, or to at least allude to the fact that when people commit crimes that, obviously they're taking risks, right? And risk of arrest, risk of even worse, being hurt, being killed, depending on the crime, the circumstances. And for some of us, once you end up in prison, especially for a significant amount of time, it does something to you. Has all sorts of impacts on you. And one of the things is, if you change your mind from one of, let's say, someone who's thinking about committing crimes, right, to, a law-abiding citizen, it, in a strange way, it takes the risk-taking out of you, meaning the system kind of beats it out of you because you don't want to go back. So it makes sense that you don't want to take risks, so to speak. But the irony is that the same type or similar type of risk-taking that people exemplify when committing certain type of crime, particularly money-related crimes, is the same or similar type of risk-taking that entrepreneurs take, right? People who start businesses are not the norm, right? Everyone is not starting businesses. It's like I said, it's inherent in being an entrepreneur is being a risk-taker. Similarly, when it comes to investing in the stock market, right? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, all those types of things, right? You are very clear that you are taking a risk, right? And yet, people like myself do it all the time. So what am I getting at? I thought it was ironic that many of us who end up in prison because of because some people are innocent, but for taking risks that landed us in prison, that now that we are home, we don't want to take risks with our money for fear that something is going to go wrong. So risk has become associated with things not working out well. And it is so ingrained and so emotional and basic that some people never invest after incarceration for fear of not having enough money, for fear of something going wrong. And so as a result, they end up either spending most of their money or saving. And while there's nothing wrong per se with saving, as you've heard me say over and over again, saving, in most instances, barely keeps up with inflation, meaning that prices go up faster than the rate of your savings, which means you're really still behind in the bigger scheme of things. And so the way to build wealth, which is what this channel is about, it's not about saving, it's about investing, right? It's about building wealth, more specifically. The way to do that is by investing in yourself, in your knowledge, your information, your skill sets, and investing in either stocks, bonds, real estate, your own business. Those are the ways to wealth. There's no other way, right? And so I thought it was ironic that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel like he does, several of my friends, as much as I always talk about investing, they're like, yeah, I'm going to get around to it. And I believe deep down that part of the reason why they don't is for fear of losing money, not having enough money when they need it, or having access to the money. And the truth is that the real risk when it comes to investing, and I've said this before, the real risk, especially for those of us who have done significant amounts of time, 10, 20, 30 years in prison, the real risk is not investing. It's not investing. It's, because you can't build wealth if you don't have any, I don't want to say you don't have any skin in the game, because you could borrow money. But if you don't either use your own money or someone else's money, right? Yeah, I mean, it's one way or the other. You have to either have equity or debt, right? Those are the two ways to get at building wealth. But if you have neither, and you just have the idea of one day I will invest, then you will never become wealthy, right? You will never get to a point where you are comfortable, right? Financially comfortable. If not financially free, financially comfortable. And so, again, I just thought it was really fascinating to hear it, because it wasn't surprising, but the brother was speaking very passionately. He was like, man, you know how, and because we talked about a couple of things, not just investing, we also talked about credit. And he used a really good example. In New York State, I imagine it's similar in other states, but in New York State, they have a term in the city, New York City, Rikers Island, and also in the state system, where when people borrow, meaning incarcerated people borrow, let's say commissary items, the term they use is juggle, right? So basically the way it works, and it's basically usury, meaning that the price, the rate is crazy. So if someone may want a bag of chips, let's say, or popcorn, right? They run out of stuff, meaning they bought some items from commissary, they run out of stuff, and so they want to get some more, they want to have some more, enjoy some more, to hold them over until they go back to commissary, which in New York State, in the prison system, is every 2 weeks, right? So what people will do is the entrepreneurial type will stack up, buy a whole bunch of chips, cookies, canned items, whole bunch of stuff, and basically have their own little supermarket, right? And they will offer it to whomever wants to get it until the next commissary buy, as we call it. They will offer them for, usually, I don't know if it's changed, but it's usually 1 for 2 or 2 for 3. What do I mean? So 1 bag of popcorn, let's say, if I borrowed 1 bag of popcorn on the juggle, as they call it, I don't know where that term comes from, but it's been around for decades, right? So If I wanted to get one bag of popcorn from the Juggle Man, right? The person who has a store, literally a store, in his cell or cube, if it's a dorm, then come commissary, I have to return 2. So that person has doubled the juggler, the person who's selling or trading or whatever, or bartering these items, not bartering, but trading, has doubled their money, essentially, right? And, or what they'll do is they'll say 2 for 3, which is not quite double, but they get still a nice amount, right? So, so you can get 2 bags of popcorn and then return 3, right? So that's still a 50% profit. So either way, the juggler is making money. The way this fits into this scenario of risk and risk avoidance, and how it's so ingrained in some people who have done time, is that, again, we're talking about prison, right? So, whereas on the outside, if you don't pay your debt, let's say to credit card company, they're not going to beat you up, right? They're not going to send the police at you, but they will report it to the credit bureaus. So you'll pay that way, right? That is the penalty, right? That your credit score will suffer and has real life consequences. So it is real. Prison, being prison, is different. It is physical, right? Especially in the men's prison, meaning that people get violent. Not that people are violent, but people get violent, become violent. And so if someone does not pay their 3 bags of popcorn or 2 bags of popcorn, right, they risk one of 2 things. One, they risk having interest. They don't use the term interest, but that's essentially what it is. Similar to like the credit card industry. They risk owing more. So instead of, if I borrow 2 and I owe 3, and for whatever reason I cannot, am unable to pay the person back come commissary, then, I don't know, I mean, people have different ways of doing it. They might say, okay, well, next commissary, you owe me 4, right? Instead of 3 bags, you owe me 4 or 5. I've seen that. And it goes up and up and up. And so that's one consequence. Another one is when someone repeatedly, like, does not pay for weeks and weeks, then they could risk physical harm, literally, right? Physical harm. And some people don't just borrow like popcorn, they borrow, a whole bunch of stuff, right? And they can, again, it can lead to physical harm. And it's not just, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but it's not just food items that are used in this way. People borrow all sorts of things in prison, and if they can't pay after a certain amount of time, they risk bodily harm. And everyone knows this, right? I mean, people take this stuff seriously. It's not like just going to your neighbor, like when I was growing up in the projects in East New York, Brooklyn. My grandmother would send us downstairs. We lived on the 2nd floor. She would send us down to Miss Edna on the 1st floor and borrow eggs, borrow all sorts of things. I hated it. I was like, I mean, that's what people did, but I didn't like the idea of borrowing eggs and sugar and things like that, flour, right? But there was no consequences. We always paid back. My grandmother always paid back. But again, in prison, it's very different. Very different. Some people don't pay. Some people don't have any intentions of paying. And then as a result, like I said, they risk physical harm. They can get hurt. They can get beat up, right? And so because it's kind of in the air, people know that, people take it seriously. Most people pay. Most people do pay, right? But for those who don't, like I said, they risk physical harm. And so the conversation that I had the other day at a friend's house, it was several of us, was about money, it was about investing, but it was also about credit and how the guy was saying, I don't want to say his name, but the brother was saying how he was at least alluding to it, that there was something stopping him from investing because attached to investing is the notion and reality of risk. And he was saying by extension that he was like, and so you know how like when we was inside and people juggle, it's a problem, or it could be a problem if people juggle, they borrow and they don't pay, they can get hurt. I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. And so I think he was alluding to the fact that not that he would be hurt, but from years and years of being in that environment, that there was some emotional impediment or block to him investing, because he felt that he would that there would be some consequence, some negative consequence to him investing, right? And again, it's so fascinating. But as I mentioned, because most of us who end up doing long stints, right? Because we don't have savings, we don't have any investments, no 401k, no IRA, no Social Security, anything like that. Because of that, that reality, we are ill prepared for living in society as a much older person in our 50s and 60s. We are ill prepared. So, and we put ourselves at risk of being on public assistance, being in, as we say, old folks' home, basically being taken care of by the government once again. That's the reality of this thing, and it's a sad reality. And again, it's partly because we have not been taught personal finances, so we don't understand it. And like a lot of people, we fear what we don't understand. And because the kind of risk-taking, you say bug or inclination that we had for committing crimes. Again, obviously, I'm not promoting committing crimes, but what I'm saying is that we've lost the instincts to take risk, positive, calculated risk, so that we could have better financial footing, financial standing, and a much more comfortable lifestyle. And so, yeah, that was a few days ago on Labor Day, and I haven't stopped thinking about that, how there must be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have done significant amounts of time in prison or several stints in jail and have not invested. They may want to invest. They think about it. They may have even dabbled, meaning they invested a little bit, and then because it didn't double overnight, then they say, "Oh, this is not, this is not worth it," right? They start second guessing themselves, and as a result, as they get older, and they're in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s, then they have nothing at all to point to or call on in terms of savings, right? It's really that simple. And so it's a sobering thought. The older I get, right? I'm 55, and I thank God that I did think about and think about investing at an early age, 30 years ago, right? I thank God that I am financially literate, that I actually love and enjoy this space, meaning understanding money, how it works, money psychology, and all of that, and am able to connect the dots when, you know, on the news they're talking about inflation or interest rates or tariffs. Like, I have a very, very good and deep understanding of how the world works in terms of money. And I'm just so grateful for that, because it just puts me in a space where I no longer focus on working for money, but having money work for me. And not, like I said, being fearful of money or being afraid to take risks, calculated risks, right? You're gonna lose money, right? We lose money all the time. Gonna lose money in investing, whether it's real estate or business, stocks, bonds, it doesn't matter. You're gonna lose money, but you learn, you keep going. And if you are staying on top of it and you have good counsel and, you know, consistent education, then you're gonna make more money, I believe, than lose money. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you all today, to really think about this, that the real risk is not investing itself per se, right? The real risk is not investing. And that's serious. I mean, it really is serious, because it has like life, you know, real life consequences, right? So, meaning that some people may have to work into their 70s after doing 10, 20, 30 years in prison. They have to work another 20 plus years, where some people are retiring in their late 50s or 60s. Others have to continue to work. They don't have a choice. It's either that or they live on public assistance because they were afraid to invest. And I'm saying I don't want that to be you, right? So you can learn more about investing from numerous sources. Among them, my book, The New SSI Method. You can get it on Amazon. I also have a book on entrepreneurship, Think Outside the Cell, also on Amazon. And and also join, let me say this, and also join the Think Outside the Cell community. So just type in Think Outside the Cell community. We have, it's on a school platform, SKOOL, Think Outside the Cell community, where every day we're chopping it up as a community. It's a global community of people impacted by the criminal justice system, and trying to level up our mindsets and our money. So with that said, again, the real risk is not investing, right? Standing on the sidelines and just working until we can't work anymore, right? Until we take our last breath. That's not the way we want to live. It's not the way I'm going to live. And with that, I say this is your boy Joe, the Wealth Architect. Let's get this money.